let me see something here, actually. Let me try unplugging this microphone first. Okay, and speaking straight to the computer. Is there a big difference in the quality of sound?
No, I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I can hear you fine as well.
Then let's do that then. I just wanted to make sure that the oven, the wood stove is just not like too loud. All right, guys. So I'm looking at myself right now. I'm a little self-conscious because I have a sty. Is that how you call it, sty? In my eye, and it's hurting and it's a little swollen. So just, excuse me for that. But the presence is here all the same, and the content is definitely going to be here. So this is the second part of our synthesizing and interpreting series. And at this stage, we're more and more gaining momentum here with putting things together. Okay? Again, I'm gonna have to forget my big swollen eye here. I don't want my hair in my face the whole time. We're at a stage right now where things are starting to gain momentum. We're starting to put things together. And I want to continue making clear here this process that we are going to start combining these elements of astrology that we learned. But a big part of this is you practicing and you watching me do it. Right? When you're going to take a class or have a class in anything, this is what it entails, the practice. You practice and you watch the teacher, the one who's teaching, doing it. These two combined with the technical bits that you're learning, this is really what's going to enable you to start synthesizing your own charts. So I want to start off here by reminding you that this is my intention all along, is to bring all these three together, okay, in unison, harmoniously together for you. Now, on one hand, it can seem overwhelming. Oh, and I have, practice, and I have her showing how she does her chart, and then the classes, it's just so overwhelming. Well, first of all, you can always go at your own pace. You don't have to follow every single one of them every time they come out. But second, there is a reason why I'm bringing these elements together now for you, because it's a piece of all of these elements that is going to enable you to start doing this. So very soon we're going to, I know we have already the bonus practice gatherings that we've been having with Myra. And I hope that you all have been finding benefit in that, in exercising your own abilities to look at a chart and interpret, put things together. But very soon we're going to be finding other ways to do it, It may not be everybody, one by one. We're getting quite a big group here, but there's going to be opportunities for you to start using this more concretely, the things that I'm teaching you. And I hope that you are already on your own as well, okay, doing that. But I do have all these different types of offerings that are catering to the different aspects of what it means to be an astrologer. You need to practice. You need to watch the teacher do it. You need to learn. So we're bringing all these together for you in a very generous way here in the mentorship program, because we're getting a lot of content and diversity as well. So remember that you don't have to watch everything all at once. And there are going to be certain elements that you're going to feel more comfortable with than others. For some of you, it's easy to dive in and start practicing. Others, you want to be sure, you want to be safe, you want to have all the angles first and all the pieces together before you start venturing. It's just different modalities. But pick the one, obviously, that you feel resonates with you the most, but know that everything I'm adding to the mentorship program is designed to help you grow and actually be able to come out from the theory and into the practice of it, which is where most astrology lovers kind of get stuck at, is the, oh, this is so cool learning, but then putting it all together and using it. So I'm helping you all take the next step and go to the next level of that. Okay. All right. So we have a few more people in here. So I want to also announce, of course, to the ones watching the replay way later, this is going to be not applicable anymore, but this is going to be, I want to dedicate a little moment here to introduce a gift that I want to share with you. Now, I mentioned this once, so many of you already know about this, but maybe others, this is your first time hearing. So I felt compelled to share a gift with you on this holiday season. And it really came from a desire to get to know you all better, you know, not just as people that were once following my work or, you know, loving what I do and then decided to learn with me, but really as people, as humans, and what your dreams are and your projects and who you are, you know. And a great deal of that actually was Corolla. Yes, the one with the solar return, honey. You inspired me deeply because I did her chart like over a year ago. It was in August in 2019 when I was in Guatemala. And it was such a profound experience for both of us. You know, I remember that session very well, and your story and your situation. And I remember the big year you had ahead of you, 2020. And having you remind me of that on the last class that we had, and remind me how I was, you know, sharing with you, honey, just make it through 2020, like the light is at the end of the tunnel. And seeing your evolution through that, like that session touched you so deeply that you decided to start learning astrology. Like, hello. That moves me so deeply. And there are many of you in here that have the same story. Like many of you in here that I met just giving a session to, and you were so deeply moved with the session that you decided to learn astrology. Like, that's really touching. So anyway, you know, I went, I checked out your beautiful work that we once talked about in your solar return, and it's now a beautifully evolved baby. And I went, I checked it out, and I gave you my little support and my smile, and it makes me so happy. And I was like, wow, there's so many of you in here that I want to get to know. So that was the beginning of my inspiration there. And so I mentioned it on an email, right, to you guys. And one of you so beautifully, lovingly called it a date. And I thought that was so sweet. And, you know, you were thanking me for the date with Raquel Spring and the other members. And I thought that was really sweet. So I decided to call it Date with Raquel Spring. And I'm calling you all on a date with my big purple eye and my bathrobe. If you will accept this invitation, here is how it's going to go. I so wish I could spend a full hour with each of you. You know I mean that. I really do. But I don't have the time right now. There's a lot happening in my world too. So I'm thinking of getting 4 of you together for an hour. If we have 4 of you together, I feel like we can have a safe little space where we can open up and, you know, this is going to be, I want to have your charts in front of me, just if there's anything that stands out or that we just want to bring up at the spot. But, you know, it really is a time just so we can have that heart connection and get to know each other. Okay. So 4 of us and me. And I'm going to be having my sister, Mary, send out the forms and coordinate this exactly with you, because I know not everybody's going to be able to participate. I wish I could have everyone, you know, everything worked out for everyone, but I'm going to be offering 3 times, 3 slots during the day, morning, afternoon, and evening, and having her send out a form to you with the details for you to fill out, and, you know, which one works better for you. And then we're going to try to coordinate it the best possible. And these are going to happen on Wednesdays and Thursdays. That's going to be on the paper as well. Okay. So my time slots are going to be, I believe, 9:30 my time. Okay, so that's 8:30 Pacific. 8:30 Pacific. Then noon Pacific. And then like 5 or 5:30. It's going to be either 12 or 12:30 Pacific, and then 5 or 5:30 Pacific the third time. I'm still defining, but we're going to send out those forms within the weekend. So if you're able to participate and would like to participate, I don't think this is going to be recorded. I don't feel to record these, but we can see if everybody in the crowd wants to. We can film it. I just want to make this a space for all of us to just kind of connect better. Okay, see what you guys are up to. Let me see what else. Yeah, I think that's it. So we're going to send you all the form. Oh yes, okay. So we're going to send you the form, and what I spoke to her is about having, I have my calendar here in front of me, having the whole of next week for everybody to fill it out. So that's going to be until next Sunday, no, until Sunday the 17th, okay, to fill it out. And then after that, the doors are going to close. So, I can only do what I can do. This is what we're going to be available for, because after that, we're going to close doors. She's going to fit everybody in my schedule, and then I'm going to start doing it. So, hoping to get started by that same week. So if we close doors on the 17th, then the first one would be the 20th and the 21st. Okay, the first groups actually. Yay, yes, yay. Okay, got some chapstick. So I'm very homey here today, in case you haven't noticed. After all these New Year, Grand Conjunction, what else? Christmas, like losing count, so many things here. Oh yes, one more thing. I'm going to ask, I'm finalizing my website. Whoever wants to participate to leave a little testimonial for me, I would love that. So right now, Myra has been helping me birth this incredible baby that it's just been taking 5 years for me to do my website. It's crazy. So she's on the last stages now of helping me birth this, and we're going to have a little segment for the testimonials. So don't need anything fancy or anything big, but in the form I'm going to send you a special invitation to also add a few words about your experience with me and the mentorship program. Just whatever you want to say. It could be 3 words and it can be 3 lines, as long as it comes from your heart and the truth. I'm looking mainly for points that set me apart from other astrologers and my work, so that the people going in there can know what they will be getting and benefiting with. Also, anything you want to add about how you feel with me and our community. But I will add a couple just pointer suggestions if you don't know what to say. If you would like to contribute but don't know exactly what to say, you could just look at those points and get a little idea. So if you have an inspiration and would like to share a few words, I will happily display them on the Learn Astrology segment of my website. Okay, along with a picture too. That would be nice. It could be your Facebook or whatever you want. Okay. Whew. Raquel Spring is lively today. All right, everyone. I'm really excited about this class. Probably more even than all the other ones we've been having, because I feel that after this class, you are going to be feeling a lot more settled into what you are even doing with all these planets and houses and stuff. It's not an overnight process, but there are steps we take. And I feel like today we're going to take a nice big step here. So I'm excited. So last class, we focused a lot on the elements, okay? We also focused a lot on the principle of the essence of the energies and where they all start to kind of trickle into these other parts of the zodiac in astrology. So The archetypes are a lot of these groupings that we do with similar energies that work together. So in the sense, archetypes are, they're groupings of energies. Don't ever mistake that, like, oh, a sign is the same as a planet. Even the fact that we call a planet that is the ruler of a sign, we have to be very careful with these correlations that we do with these archetypes, because they're each very distinct in their expression and their function, but they go under same groupings. They have similar roles and purposes. But a Mars is not the same as an Aries. Okay, so even though Mars is the ruler of Aries and Mars will have similar attributes, it corresponds to that same energy. The planet is the planet, as you're gonna more and more define. Planet is its own unique character in the zodiac. And even the qualities of Mars are its own, very much its own. Like, for example, Mars is very much sexual energy. Now, Aries is also sexual energy. I mean, depending what you have in Aries, it could describe a sexual nature, yes. But there's a lot of other signs that are very sexual. Taurus, Scorpio, Leo, like there's a lot of other signs that are very sensual and very sexual. So this is one, it's one example to show you that even though we have the same archetype here, they have similar attributes and functions, and they work kind of for the same goals and roles. They still have very unique, a sign is a sign and a planet is a planet. And a house is, of course, a house. So, let's keep that in mind as we start to evolve now with our uses of even the archetypes. I bunched them all together for you so we could be efficient and we could start taking faster steps here, But let's keep in mind that each one is its own function in the zodiac. So we started with the essence. We focused a lot on the essence of that's so funny. I feel like I should have thought of this. I have the light coming through here and it's like shining on my swollen eye. I should have actually done the opposite, right? Like have the sat over there. This is funny. So anyway, so we have these essences, and the essences are always really important for me because the essence is the starting point of where these energies start to break down from. So understanding the essence is understanding the heart and soul of the picture you're seeing. And that's why starting, with the elements is a powerful, it's a powerful place to start, and not necessarily the elements. It doesn't mean you're going to have to start looking at a chart by looking at the elements, okay? I'm just saying that this is a lot of the starting point of where these energies are going to now start to trickle down into the rest of the chart. We looked a little bit at modalities as well. So here's a refresher. First thing, you get that intuitive whiff of the chart. Lock into the elements and modalities. See if there's anything that stands out to you. Okay? When you're using your intuition, sometimes things will stand out to you. It's not always just about the numbers. Sometimes you will see a crazy chart like mine with 7, 8 placements in air and nothing in earth except for Chiron. And you'll be like, oh my God, okay, I need to talk about that with the person. But other times you're not going to see something that drastic, but maybe your intuition will just give you a little nudge there. Another really powerful tip as an astrologer, and I got stuck on this so much because of all the air I have in my chart, I can really go down the intellectual route and really try to first understand why, to then even want to go further and talk about it. So this is very key. When you work with astrology, you're not going to get your full picture right away. Don't demand that from yourself. You're starting with the elements and you see a crazy configuration, like I just said, a bunch of air, no earth. And you're like, oh my God, obviously this means something. Don't get discouraged with trying to understand what that means before going to something else. I know there's some students in here that just their mode of learning and the way the mind works is just more comfortable that way. Astrology is not linear. So what this means, and this is a tip for you, no matter what chart you're looking at, you're going to come across elements of the chart that are going to stand out to you. Like one that we're going to talk about next is just the overall planet distribution of the chart. Sometimes it's not going to be anything outstanding, but sometimes it is. You're going to find elements in the chart that are going to stand out to you. Here's a super big secret that I do. This is what I do when I read charts is don't force yourself to try to figure it all out. Be easy, be gentle. As you're looking at that, let it stand out. Oh, it stood out. Do I know how? Oh, I may have a hint, a tip. Okay. Leave it. Great. I'll come back to it later. Why do you do that? Because you're going to keep doing that in the other parts of the chart, and other things are going to come standing out to you. Boom, 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 boom. And all these little things, like they're puzzle pieces. They're puzzle pieces. So sometimes you're only going to find this part here of the puzzle when you get to this part and you see this little picture that's forming. Because a chart is never going to be just showing a theme once. If it's especially if it's a significant theme, there's going to be a lot of other things in the chart that are going to be confirming that theme and adding to the story. So that's when you start to get your full interpretation. So be gentle on yourself. This is not a linear thing. That's why using your intuition is also very important. And maybe your intuition will tell you to pay attention to the elements and you don't fully know yet why. And maybe it's not even the distribution of the elements, but maybe there's just something about the element of fire that you need to pay attention to. And when you go to the person's chart and you're looking at all these things, then you see the south node of the person is in Aries, for example. And you're like, okay, this is speaking to me again. There's something about either the fire element or the Aries sign. Then you want to look at Mars to see if Mars has anything to show you. It's a very personal thing here. You listen. You let the chart speak to you. You listen humbly. This is one thing that I'm learning with astrology is I don't know nothing. This is not about me. This is like the chart is its own intelligence and its own masterpiece. And I'm humbly having tea with it and a seat with it and listening to what it's saying. And so I don't even look at the chart as one person. I see it as, like a collective intelligence that's playing out in such an intricate way through the expression of this human being. It's an honor. It's beautiful. It's quite an experience. Those of you that have had sessions with me, it's an experience. It's not a session. It's an experience we have together. And I share in that experience with you. This is why it's an experience. So, my hope is that you all can also have an experience with your chart. Whatever chart you're looking at, it's an intelligence. It's a form of a mini little fractal of intelligence on that piece of paper they're communicating to you. So having that level of respect and allowing your intuition to guide you and not being like pushing your way through and like, I know best. Let me start with the sun and then the moon and because that's the ABC. That's how I do it. And pushing your way through. Like we're bringing a new evolutionary expression right now through astrology, I feel. At least I am. And I want to share that with you because it helps you take your perspective of that chart to a whole other level. So let your intuition speak about the elements. Let it speak about the modalities. Because now the next step I want you to look at is the planet distribution, the lines in the middle that we call angles, I'm sorry, aspects and angles. He wanted to come through first. me. No, this over here is last. So we have, the angles are going to be a big one because they're going to introduce houses and signs that we're going to start merging and understand what that process is like. That's why I said this class you're going to learn a lot. So I'm going to cover this very briefly because, again, this is also an intuitive part here. When I talk about the aspects and the lines in the middle, and even the planetary distribution, I want you to have an intuitive overall sense of this dynamic here. Yes, we have, the overall themes of, for example, the planetary distribution. We know that a lot of planets in the top hemisphere, for example. Actually, I'm going to go through that after with you. Let me finish with the intuition part first. Even though there is a little bit of a technical part to it, we're still paving the way. We're paving the way to add the planets. The planets are the ones who are really going to tell the story here. Okay, so we're paving the way, and so this is a very there's going to be elements here that are not going to be cut and dry because they're not going to make full sense to you until you bring in the planets and until you bring in the planets and until you start to form more of a solid picture here. You're setting the groundwork. So the elements is one of them. Don't get too hung up. Oh my God, I have a lot of air. Don't get too hung up yet before looking at the rest of the planets. You want to know what Gemini is doing, where it is, which ones are the planets in there, like all of that, all the other air signs as well. And we're going to learn all of that. That's going to come especially by observing me synthesize it and how I weigh and outweigh these things, okay? This is not something that I can hear in 1, 2, 3 teach you. So I'm going to show you how this works. You're going to see me. You have already seen me many times in practice. So with the elements, modalities, you are setting the tone. When you look at a chart structure, you're going to get that immediate, like I said in the other session, the whiff of the chart, the energetic imprint. And two big factors that are going to give you those energetic imprints are the aspects and the overall planetary distribution in your chart. We'll talk about aspects next. Planetary distribution is going to give you an overall sense of this person's inclinations. Okay? Look at my choice of words here. These are just inclinations. They're not even choices. These are, overall energetic inclinations. It's the best word here. And these inclinations can already start defining the personality of the person. This can, if you're looking at compatibility, for example, you can already start to see a lot of similarities between charts. But you're not giving an interpretation yet. Not yet. I'm going to get into the technical parts of the planetary distribution just superficially here because it's not such a big deal. Trust me. Not when you start including everything else, there's a lot more that's going to start speaking here. The aspects is something that it's not what you're thinking. I'm not talking about actually understanding the dynamic between two planets here. I'm talking about the overall whiff of the entire puzzle. So again, this is the overall energetic way that the aspects and the lines are just kind of meshed together. I talked about this concept and I gave you this tip. This is just a personal tip that I use in my charts, especially on the lunar returns. This is very helpful in lunar returns. I like doing that. When I started teaching and I got the group of girls, Myra and Sizzy and Tracy and Cheryl, and was there anyone else? I hope I'm not leaving anybody out. But we had a beautiful little group, and we had a few sessions here. I was like getting my feet wet with Lucia. Yeah, I said Lucia, didn't I? Lucia, oh my darling. Lucia was there too. And we had our first few getting our feet wet here with lunar return charts and how do we talk about it and teach it and all that. And I introduced this concept to them, and I told them that when I get my lunar return, one of the first things I do is I get that overall width of the chart. And one of it is the lines in the middle. Sometimes I can just, this is another, like for those of you that have a lot of Pisces and a lot of water and you just love the letting it flow, your intuition, this is a good one. You know, just look at the lines in the middle and just let that speak to you. The aspects, these beautiful lines, there's a geometry there. I mean, this is, it touches me very deeply because it's a very harmonious play of energies and conversations that to me really have to do with timelines. You know, I mean, I don't want to get too far out there. This is not a class here about, you know, I go straight into the heart and soul of everything, but it's so beautiful. So you can definitely play around just with that. It's so exciting. You can sit just with that, exclude the rest, cover the rest. I told the girls when I talked to them, I said, it's so hard for me because I have all this air. I just want to dive straight into the puzzle piece and the picking and the putting together and all the, so it's really hard. And I have to like cover it sometimes so I won't get ahead of myself and start looking at the planets. And if you have to do it, do it. Cover the rest of the chart, cover the rest of the planets. And just stay with that for even if it's 30 seconds. Even and especially if you're just admiring it. With that humble approach that I was talking about. It's really a state of awe, like a child-filled state of awe, you know, that you feel when you see something so complex and so perfect and you don't even fully understand it. There's a whole journey behind the alignment of those two planets or the combination of all those planets together. This is like, you know, thousands and maybe millions of human beings and journeys and so many complex situations and stages of evolution that's coming together. I know, it's crazy. It's what happens when you have an overload of air. It's just like, yeah. But I noticed we have a few newcomers here that just joined. So you may want to watch the beginning of this because I gave a lot of really important announcements and powerful introductions as well to where we're at right now with our class. So welcome. Thank you for joining. And please watch the beginning at the replay. So when you sit with that part of the chart, not trying to understand, you're going to get there later. You're going to understand the angles and the degrees and all the intellectual stuff, all the fun stuff. It's going to come soon. But right now we're setting the tone. Okay, let that geometry speak to you. Whether it's red lines or blue lines or green lines. Yes. We have one more newcomer. And my dear, I think it's Cosmo, if I'm not mistaken. And I know you are a new astrology lover as well in our mentorship program. Welcome. I was just asking the newcomers to please watch the beginning of the video when the replay is up, because I gave a lot of very powerful introductions here to where we're at in our class right now. And a lot of important announcements about date with Raquel Spring that's coming up. Okay. Yes, so glad that you could be here. So glad. Okay, so, oops. Okay, so when you look at that part of the chart, remember that you are setting the tone. You don't have to understand all the ifs, buts, and hows. Maybe you will want a refresher in the beginning. Okay, it's okay. In the beginning, it's kind of boring. You have to keep going back to the book. And you have to keep going back to the notes. And, you know, but at least you didn't have to learn it all by yourself like I did. I was like really difficult. So, you know, you have support. You can ask questions if you have any specific questions that of things that we've already learned and that I haven't that I've already addressed, but you haven't fully understood, please send messages. I want to start designating a Q&A section for the mentorship portal as well. Cosmo, thank you for pointing out to me. This is the first time it's pointed out to me. I think nobody else really noticed that, but the bonus folder, there are two lessons there that are empty. They're without audio or video, and that's because they're actually meant to go to a Q&A part section that I at the time was starting to do, and I don't know even where those audios are. I'm gonna see if I can find them, and then I'll upload it there. But if not, we are creating that. Jen is helping, as you already know. She has been such a powerful help and support during this time, helping compile, extract a lot of the content of what I'm giving here in these classes and compiling it for descriptions. As she's doing that, she is coming across her own questions of my classes as she's rewatching them. So she's sending them to me, and I think they're fantastic questions, and I want to welcome them as well as any other ones, because this can help you all answer questions you may have. And as I answer them, I want to be able to post them to share for the benefit of everyone. Okay. So how did I get from there to there? I don't know. But back to setting the tone for the chart, it's very important to know that, oh yes, the notes. You will be going back to your notes. You will be, going and doing the work in the beginning. There's going to be a little bit of that. But it's not as much as you think. The concepts have already been laid out and taught to you. The most difficult part, remember, I've always been saying that from the beginning. This is the most difficult part, is the laying the foundation. Once you have that, it's just about using it and knowing how to strategically interweave it together to synthesize a chart. But if you truly understand what's essential in astrology, what's not so essential, and the heart and soul and essence, which is where I go to the heart, soul, essence. So much that that's going to be one of the logos in my website too. Learn astrology, heart, soul, essence. When you go to the heart, soul, essence of things, you extract, you take the shortcut, and you're able to extract not only the technical part, but also the meaning behind it. So when you go to the heart, soul, essence, for example, of air, of the element of air, it's so much easier to get that instantaneous, intuitive insight when you look at a chart that has a whole bunch of air. And then your part is to allow that insight to come and then let it go. Move on. Let it go. So you get the whiff, energetic imprint of the elements, the modalities, the planetary distribution. We're going to talk next. And right now we're in the aspects. We're in, I don't know why this is. Okay. I don't even know how to turn it off. But you get that overall energetic imprint. Don't try to define it. Yes, sometimes it's going to stand out. There are a lot of red lines here. There are a lot of green lines. There are a lot of this. But don't try to fully make sense of it yet before looking at the rest of the chart. Okay? Because there's more to speak to you. You'd be surprised at how you can be limiting yourself by starting to create an idea and a story right off the bat. So having that level of flexibility, I feel that as a professional, for those of you that are wanting to take a professional route, this especially is very important. Very important. Because you can be limiting yourself to what you're looking at in the chart if you start to define and paint the picture so soon. So sit a little bit with that. Sit a little bit with the middle of the chart. Sometimes just the way that they're arranged in the chart is you can have a feeling in your body, seriously. Like sometimes it's very messy and confusing and all over the place. Other times it's like strong and boom, it comes all the way. And other times it will give you a feeling in your body of just like lightness and a little bit of, you'll start to create this experience, put it together by observing it. And this is why it's so important. The way you observe the chart is so important. My God, that's a whole other subject we can have a whole other class about. The fact that you are observing something so powerful, that's so multidimensional, it has so many levels and layers, and your act of observing that, you're helping shape it. So that's a whole other conversation there. And this is another reason why you want to be light about it. Let the chart speak to you. Don't start imposing your ideas of the chart or what you think. Yeah, it's very powerful, teacher. I know. I take my job very seriously, sometimes too seriously that I don't want to do it. No, I don't want to do it. It's serious. I'm like, I'm doing this for the world. This was a big dilemma of mine. Big dilemma of mine. I don't mind, doing it for myself or a small group of people. And, in essence, ultimately, this is a big responsibility because this is what all seers and, man, how do I turn this off? Someone is spamming my phone. No joke. I think this is spam. Because it's like crazy. Anyway, I get really touchy. This is very much, oh gosh, this is bothering me. Okay. This is a subject that I get very serious about, is about our sense of responsibility, all as intuitives, as empaths, as people that look into other people's lives in a non-linear way, which means looking at the future, looking at the past lives, putting all these pictures together is it's not something that I think anybody should do unless you are ready for that, because you are doing a lot more than just that immediate session with the person. And when you're doing it for the world, it's very, very tricky, because what are you contributing? There's all these different co-creation points too. So your responsibility on a bigger scale here with the planet or with groups of people, it's a big responsibility to make sure that you are pointing people to, I believe, I don't want to say the wrong or right, I don't like those words, but like the ultimate intention of the soul. I can say that through astrology. That's what I do. So I feel that, oh, I know how to turn this off. Just turn it off on my phone. If I turn it off on my phone, it will turn it off here. That's what happens when you have a lot of friends. Did I turn off? Airplane mode on. Yes. And so I've already gotten into some very intense conversations with close people where I feel like there could be a misuse of this energy, and not on purpose, but it's just we need to be very responsible about this when we're doing this for others. Okay. So let the chart speak to you. Be humble about it. Come back to it. Oh my God, that's such a powerful key. I'm ending up just giving a lot of tips here as an astrologer as well. Come back to it. Oh my God, don't try to figure out all at once. This is a complex masterpiece here, especially if it's a natal chart. A lunar return, okay, I'll go back to it, because you go filling in the blanks every week as you go, and you go learning new things, and it's just such a beautiful communication. What? I thought I had turned off my phone. How did this happen? Man. Ugh. So, see, this is why I like to be a hermit. I like to be left alone. No, just kidding. So, this over here is a very big responsibility that I feel that I'm sharing with you as your teacher. And one big, big, big secret is, when you learn how to develop that level of intimacy with astrology and with a chart, even if it's a paid client, you're not just going to look at that chart once. At least up until when you deliver the session. At least for me, after I deliver the session, I have so many new sessions that come in all the time that unless I have a reason, or I'm working with the person or something like that, it's really hard for me to go back after. But until you deliver that message, while you're painting that picture, don't think that you're going to get it all in one sitting. As a matter of fact, I will tell you with confidence that the more you come back to a chart, the more you're going to extract from it. Should I call this person to stop?
Raquel?
Really? Yeah. I can only imagine how annoying that must be for you guys.
Can you put it on silent?
But what? If I put my computer, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear me.
Raquel.
What?
You have to do your phone.
What's that?
You have to log out. You have to go through iMessages and then go through settings, and then you have to log out. You have to like disconnect your phone.
In my computer or in my phone?
On your computer.
Okay, will you guys bear with me then while I do this?
Myra.
Just give me a second. So what am I doing?
We'll wait for you.
It's what happens when you have a Capricorn in the third house. It's like these things are like speaking Greek to me. So take me step by step here, Myra. Where's
Myra.
Yeah.
Can she just quit? Like right click on the iMessage?
No, it doesn't work like that because it's connected. So you go to messages and then you go to preferences.
Yeah.
This happens to me all the time in meetings too.
Okay, perfect.
Preferences, then you go to iMessage and then you have to sign out.
Okay, iMessage. Got it. Sign out. Sign out. Yes. Whew. All right. Thank you. Okay, perfect. Because in that way we don't get interrupted. And I noticed that I think on the last class we had a couple of these dings as well, and I don't like to be interrupted. And I'm sure you don't either. So especially when I'm like in a flow, it's like, let that flow come through. Thank you, Myra. And thank you everyone too for patience here. So when you're allowing the chart to speak to you, you're going to notice that it does. And when you have that receptor, that receptivity, and that container open to it, which is that humility that I talked about in your approach to it, it speaks to you. And so every time you go to it, it's going to show you new things, and you're going to put more and more of the picture together. And this is why the starting point is really just the starting point. Don't try to get the whole interpretation just by, even looking at the ascendant. Okay? Let the geometry speak to you. There's a whole branch of astrology, in the Magi astrology, that I have yet to learn because they're so intriguing to me, and I have their books and I still haven't had the time to go through it. But what called my attention to them is that they focus on the geometry. They don't even, use astrology. Like, their method is very unique. And their way of using astrology is not even based on the houses so much. And I love that. It's brilliant because with houses, there's a variation of, different house systems. And, in astrology, it makes a difference if your ascendant is here. And, the cusp of one house, the ascendant is never going to change. The cusp of one house is in one sign, or if it's in the other, it makes a difference. At least for someone like me who has all that air, I'm like, no, I don't settle for that. That's like, there's these systems that they vary a little bit. And even, for example, the whole sign, we talked about this in the foundation folder. There's a whole class on that. The whole sign system is great, but it's the playing it safe zone. Playing it safe. And I like to go deep. So, it's a very good, the one with the whole sign, and there's another one too that you could do, just see the whole sign in the houses all together. This over here will give you a very safe zone here for you to play with. If you're a very beginner, use that, explore that. But if you like to go deeper, you want to explore with some of the other ones. I already gave you my opinions on the video, but using this concept of geometry and just locating the planet's geometry and where they're at in the sky, and even removing the houses from the equation is just a whole other way of looking at it. So check out that book if you're interested in the geometry part of, not the book, just the Magi. They have several books. They have stuff on the internet as well. And they have really interesting concepts and uses with Chiron, which I have yet to prove and validate for myself because they're pretty radical. They only use Chiron as really good. And I'm like, maybe we haven't evolved to that part of Chiron yet, but I'm still interested. So Chiron is like the magic touch there for them. I love that, by the way, because Chiron is a very important master teacher in astrology. So allow your horizons to be expanded, but most of all, allow the geometry to speak to you. Whatever that means. Sometimes there's not going to be words. Sometimes it's just going to be a feeling. And then you're going to let it be, and you're going to move on to the next. Well, one of the next good things you can look at is a planetary distribution. Overall, you want to get the intuitive sense as well. But there is a little bit of a technical part here to this, being that overall, and we're not talking about all the ones with the bucket and the seesaw, like this is going deeper into it. If you want to study on your own, get more information on that, you're welcome to. I personally don't think it's that essential in astrology, even though it does add elements. So, you know, this is something I will let you pursue in your own time. But overall, the upper part of the chart, right? The upper part, which corresponds to the daytime of the chart, right? Being that the midheaven is noon, we learned this in the foundation. So the whole top part of the chart is the day. This is what you reveal to the world. I'm giving you a little pause here because this is when I talk about the hemispheres, and we're going to talk about the top, the bottom, and then the right, and you know the I say the right, that's Capricorn in my third house, but you have the east and the west, right, as we say, and then the north and the south of the chart. And these parts over here are corresponding to expressions within society, in your personal world, primarily because the lower part of the chart here, this bottom part of the chart, is your personal world. This is the nighttime. Now, we also have the east and the west of the chart, and these complement the personal hemisphere and the outward hemisphere. So this is where students can get a little confused, and there can be a little bit of, oh, I thought, you know, what's the difference of the east and the west part of the chart? If we already have the introvert and the extrovert, we already have the night and day. Well, let's understand first here the heart and soul of this concept really briefly. It's also not a big deal unless you see something really crazy, like someone with most of their planets in one side or, you know, on the other side. Then you want to definitely stay a little longer with it, let it speak to you a little more. But overall, it's not. Sometimes it will speak to you, sometimes it won't. Overall, the top part of your chart, the noon, the day part, this is the part that you expose to the world. Doesn't mean it's who you are, okay? I mean, obviously it's always who you are, but it doesn't mean that it's really your personal sense of self, but it's what other people see. And the lower part of your chart, the bottom hemisphere, the ninth part of your chart, is your introspective personal world. We all have that, regardless if you have all planets in one and no planets in the other. We all have a personal sense of self in our world and what that looks like. Even if there's no planets, we still have it. The picture is going to be different, but we still have it. Now, this is an important thing because as you get to a specific stage of the reading of the chart, and this is especially for natal charts, okay, especially the natal charts that you're diving deep, this is your blueprint. The other charts you'll refer to many times, but it's like to follow the unfolding of that event. But your natal chart is the essence of your journey. So when you get to a certain stage of, and I see Myra has a question here. If other people have questions that are chiming in the message, the chat box, and I'm not watching here just because I'm talking, please unmute yourself and ask, okay? I'll get to your questions in a second, Myra. When you get to a certain stage of the session of studying the natal chart, depending on the session, you want to understand more of the inner structure of the person. You know, this is a lot the inner world of the person, how the person views itself and relates to itself in its own private space. And the planets in that part of the chart are going to explain a lot about the dynamics of the child growing up, um, you know, and how that develops into your own personal understanding of self as well. And the top part of the chart, the top part of the chart is the part that the world gets to see. Like whether you like it or not, this is how, like I I I I was doing the chart of a person actually the other day, and a few months ago I had a really close friend that had this as well. So again, Black Moon Lilith, okay, totally like speaking to me. But these two people, Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven. Now it's interesting because I got a series of people with Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven a couple months ago, and then of course Black Moon Lilith just standing out in different ways. But my point here with Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven is that these people, each in their own way, okay, they are seen immediately by the world through the lens of Black Moon Lilith. So the first one that I became really good friends with is a wizard in its own way. He's a wizard in his own way, but he has a hard time accepting that. He's a very gifted individual, very gifted being, and he's very modest about his gifts and his work. And he does sacred geometry. Actually, I've even shared some of his work on the mentorship program. He's a genius, brilliant. And when he goes out, he has this like almost like a inferiority complex, the way he shared it with me, that when he goes out, people just see him as a wizard and think he's up to some sort of wizardry and, or even witchcraft or doing something of the sort, which it's, just because he exudes that Black Moon Lilith when he goes out, and he's got a bit of a rocker, and, he wears black, of course, Black Moon Lilith. And so people have this, they assume these things about him, right? That's because this is what's being exposed out there. And I believe this was the only thing except for Mars. We had Mars on the 7th house. So these were the only two factors being exposed to the public world. So he has all these other parts of him, of who he is as a soul, that people don't really see, especially because he's a hermit. So it's all tucked in away in his inner world. It's very active, it's very alive, but people only see that Black Moon Lilith. And then the second one that I'm referring to, this is just a very recent one, also Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven, and he's involved with some very powerful groups, let's put it that way, and work. And he is using the Black Moon Lilith in his own way, thankfully in a very, very beautiful and powerful way as well. He's just been entrusted a lot of responsibility. But getting to know about this person more, I found out that he's just like always the person that like the cops arrest, or people think that he did something bad, or like someone's onto him, or like he will attract that. And this is a characteristic of, and I know in the ascendant as well, right? I know I can read Paul like, hey, I also had something similar, Black Moon Lilith on the ascendant. This is also, you're just like, hey, saying, hey, look at me, I have something I'm hiding from you. That's Black Moon Lilith, Black Moon Lilith is about the hidden and so this man is actually a really good soul, and it's just an older man, but he's been in stories where like he's been beaten by the cops, and just in situations where he's just accused of these things. And so this is why it's important to get an overall understanding of the planetary distribution here, because when you do that, you at some point of the journey, depending on the person's chart, you're going to want to understand this dynamic. Now, most charts I read don't really have a need for me to talk and go so in depth about, oh, this is what you expose to the world. But like, hey, if you have a Black Moon Lilith on the midheaven, you want to understand, you want to help the person understand that, because the person can be wrongly, or feel like they're being wrongly accused or wrongly seen. Like, hey, this is not all of me. I have more. or for example, my case is also a great case, and I'm planning on making a video just talking about my chart, so you can get to know me better, my story, but also learn astrology. And in my chart, I'm a very good example of this because I have all the planets in the top part of the chart and only one planet in the bottom. And that planet is Neptune, which is already so hard to understand. And it's so difficult for me. And this is where astrology helped to understand me so well. And I was like, oh my God, I finally get it. Because when I come out anywhere publicly, I come out with all my guns. It's like, bam, I come out with everything. So I got the big personality, of course, especially with Uranus on my ascendant. It's filtered through a very electrical way, and all the downloads and all the, but I have all the bam, all the parts of my personality are like fully exposed for the world to see. And there's like no holding back. And this is where I finally got to a point where I'm making peace with that. And I'm like, okay, Raquel, stop trying to be, something that you like. Your chart is designed this way for a reason. So now I just, whatever, I have the swollen eye here, and I'm like, I'm sorry guys, I got the sty in my eye. I'm not going to try to hide it, but that's how I feel. And it's always been a challenge for me, because when I come out, I feel like people expect a lot from me. Like they always expect me to put on a show. And I've always felt that since I was a child, starting with my father. This is why I have a Leo North node, because I need to learn how to, allow myself to be seen. But I don't like that. And I'm actually very introverted. And I've always felt very wrongly misread, because the real me is Neptune. This is what I identify myself with. I identify myself with Neptune. And Neptune is very unfiltered. There's no other planets in the bottom part of my chart. So there are no other planetary influences there really speaking about or influencing my world except for Neptune. So I feel like people don't really know me or don't really see me until they either meet me or get to know me. They're like, oh my God, Raquel. I always get that. You're so different, or you're wow, you have this other side to you. I'm very Neptunian. And I'm happy, like this stage of my life, it's being able to shine through better because my progressed moon is in Pisces now. And so that's allowing me to get more in touch with what I feel is my true nature, and also reveal that to the world and be like, hey guys, like I'm not all about just the big guns. So understanding this dynamic in people's charts is going to help you understand them on a deep level. And there's nothing more touching to a person than when you understand them, when you see them. So sometimes this dynamic is going to speak to you, and it's going to be like, hey, hey, this person may go through a challenge with this. It's when we have like a lot in one element and very little or nothing in another element, or when you have a lot in one hemisphere and very little in another, this is a need for balance, and it can be a point of challenge for the person. So at some point of the session, you may want to come back to that to start putting pieces together. Which planets are the ones being exposed? I've seen charts of people where the planets that are exposed to the world, they are beautiful. It's Venus, it's the moon, it's, all the sun, Mercury, all the personal planets. And then you got all the challenging, like the hardcore ones in the bottom. Uranus, Pluto, Mars, Saturn. Wow. Like, think about it. That alone will show a lot. Like, don't judge a book by its cover. The cover of the book is the top part of the chart. That's a powerful statement too. I've never said that before. That's the book of the cover. No, the cover. There's Capricorn in the third house again. That's the cover of the book in the top part, and then the content of the book is in the bottom part. So when you see, I got the chart just like last month or something. It was a reading that I got, and I got this chart, and I was like, wow, wow, this is a soul who, talk about a soul who is not understood. You know, here I am complaining about my, I only have Neptune. Nobody sees me as Neptune. This girl is seen as such a lovable person and she has many friends, but nobody that can really dive deep in the journey with her, because her inner world is, she carries a lot. This is someone that for whatever reason, whether it has to do with past lives or her evolutionary process or whatever it is, she carries a lot inside, you know? And so this is a soul that needs to be understood. You're carrying all the big planets, the ones that bring evolution, together with Saturn and Mars, that are just here to do the work. They're not like the moon and Venus and Mercury who can negotiate and can, have the heart connection. No, they're just here to do the work. And they're all in the bottom part of her chart. So this is someone who had a difficult upbringing, someone who is here to embrace these big energies. And unless she finds someone that understands that about her, it's a hard journey. So understanding this dynamic of the planetary distribution can allow you to understand someone on a deep level further down the line when you start to put the planets together. Now, let me just check Myra's question here. Myra, do you want to mute yourself and just ask me so I don't have to?
Yeah, I was just wondering about the 12th house, because you're talking about the day and the night and how the upper hemisphere is considered a day chart, and
Yes.
how in the 12th house you get a lot of energies that are hidden. I'm just wondering how that fits in, and how does that fit into a day chart?
Yeah, and you were the one actually who asked me that question a couple months ago, and I thought it was such a good question. I was like, I'm going to record an audio for it. I never did. That's why I'm spending so long talking about it here, because Myra asked me this question, and I was like, this is a perfect question, and I want to make sure that this is also addressed here as we look at these. Primarily, I'm looking at the 4 quadrants of the chart. Okay, and then of course you can always incorporate your own, add your own, there's other people that go further into different formations of that. So yes, Myra, to explain to you and to everybody else, yes, this is a very tricky thing, because the ascendant, for example, is also the same way that the 12th house is a house that is hidden. The same with the ascendant. The ascendant is a very exposed place, but it's also in the lower hemisphere, whereas the 12th house is a hidden place and it's in the upper hemisphere, right? And so people wonder about that. So this is where I'm going to give you the interpretation and some of the starting points here, and then I want to invite anybody here that has a lot of the weight distribution in one or the other to chime in on how you experience it, because I really value the experience from someone that actually has it. So I don't have that. I can speak very well for the top and the bottom part and give you a really good understanding of that. But there's only so much I can explain with the other sides of the chart and the other quadrants here, because this is not something that I have. So my experience is only with working and studying, of course. So I want to invite you afterwards to share your experience. And a lot of it is going to be inspired also by here, what I'm going to start sharing with you. So let me see, how can I put this into words in a simple way? The top part of the chart is always going to be the part that is exposed to the world, always. The bottom part is always going to be the part that you are aware of. This is your personal sense of the world. Always. Now there's a subdivision here, one that belongs to the ascendant point, right? Which is where we have the 12th house as well. This is the area that covers the 11th, 12th, 1st, and 2nd houses, and 3rd. Here, let me get the chart here. Actually, I have the Gemini eclipse here up. Let's see. Can you guys see this? I don't even know where I'm at here with the date, December 30th. Okay, that's not so, I was probably looking at this chart. Okay, so for example, I want you to look at this chart because having a visuals is much easier. Okay, don't worry if it's a transit. Imagine it's a natal chart is where you really want to dive deeper. But you're going to use this concept for transits as well. Okay. So primarily we're sticking to natal because we're looking at the blueprint of the soul, and we know that this part over here from this line that ends the 12th and begins the 1st, and we call the ascendant, all the way to this line, this whole half part of the chart that ends in the descendant. This is a visible to the world part of the chart. This part here of the line and into all the way through this lower half and ending on the descendant is your personal sense of self. Your personal sense of self and the world around you, which means others. This is how a lot of how you view things. So for example, this chart over here, reveals the distribution here of the planets in the lower hemisphere. In this personal sense of self, we have some big players here, very big players. Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter. Okay, and now we're not looking at the date. I'm not saying this has to do with the transits, because depending on where you're at in the world, it's going to change where the planets are located. Okay, all these planets could be on the top part of the chart depending on where you're at in the world. So this here is just looking as if it was a natal chart. There's a lot of big energies here in the underworld and the personal awareness of the world. But when you start to include these other halves over here that are now working vertically, okay? Now we're not talking about the horizontal line. Now we're talking about the vertical line that is separating this half from this half. Now we are including the I, because this is pointing to the ascendant, to the self. And so this whole half over here is pointing to the I. And this half over here in this part of the vertical line is pointing to the you or them. Now, when you merge these two together, you have, for example, let's say this quadrant over here, from the first house to the third house. This is the I and my personal sense of my immediate world around me. Me, my resources, my values, what's of value to me, and my starting to branch out into the world and connect. Okay, we talked about this in the different stages of man, so we don't have to this is not a class in it either, but this is just an overall, you're merging here the me with the personal, and then over here you're merging the me, I'm sorry, not the me, your personal sense of your personal world around you with others. So now you're starting to include here. This is especially the family. This is your immediate circle of friends, your romance, your branching out into expressing yourself within a context of small groups of people, right? And friends. And of course, your work and service. This is you growing up and learning responsibility in the world with others. So here you have the personal world, very much defined here into the very beginning stages of getting to know yourself. So the first, second, and third houses is really you getting to know yourself on a very basic, instinctual, and even primordial level. Here in the first and second house, we find a lot of basic instincts of the human being and expression, which of course we're learning how to evolve also. They're not meant to be ignored, but we are learning how to use them in new ways, experience them in new ways, define new values, for example, right? Our sense of value is seen here. But this is really us getting to know ourselves. this part over here is us getting to know ourselves with others. This quadrant over here from the 7th, 8th, and 9th house, all of a sudden now you're entering into the social sphere. Remember we talked about this when we were talking about the archetypes. So the social sphere, this is why what you reveal to the world, the cover of the book is here. And when you get to this stage over here of the outside world, you're still in the realms of others. You're still learning how to co-create. You're still learning responsibility. You're in the 8th house, you're learning how to share, how to fight, how to make love. All the things of the 8th house. And then the 9th house is really where you find that partnership, that divine partnership, whether it's with one person or with a group of people, where you're coming into a very public, because look, it's reaching the midheaven. So even the social sphere, it varies from the 7th house to the 9th house. It varies, okay? There's a stage here. There's a process of this. We talked about it in archetypes. But in the 9th house, it's still about others. But it's more of here we have working with others, and we have the legal authorities, we have government, we have military, we have much more of a global, church is seen here as well. Okay, so it's still others, but look how it's evolving. And finally, when it gets to this point here of expression, it's still about the world, but you've mastered all the lessons that you're ready. It's ready to be about me again. But this stage over here, it really requires a certain level of evolution, because if you don't have that evolution, the others, this merging of the others and the me, can be either really difficult to live, difficult to understand, or if it's in the 10th house, it can be rather narcissistic. It can be authoritarian. It could be, so this over here is where you're hoping that the person has achieved that stage of maturity and evolution, so that these are big players here. When you have planets over here, it's like, all right, show me what you got. Like, you spent all this over here developing and evolving, and it's like, there's a lot of expectations here. I guess you could say it's a hard truth, but it is, because now it's not just you knowing yourself. Now it's like, what are you going to do to help the world with this type of thing? And if you don't have it in your natal chart, don't worry, honey. You'll get it on your solar return, on your lunar return, on your something. There are cycles and there are transits that go in there and activate those houses too for you, and open up cycles of that nature for you. So overall speaking, there is, getting this hemisphere here, this half of the chart, there is a focus on me over here. However, the me from the 1st house to the 3rd house is more of a self-discovery. The reason why the ascendant is such a visible point is because it's in the middle. It's ending and beginning the me with this is a cyclical thing here. Remember, the ascendant is your entrance point into the world. So it's much more than just your ascendant. This is your path, it's your journey. And so it's your starting point. On one hand, yes, you're getting to know yourself, but in another hand, you're closing a cycle of maturity of getting to know yourself. So the ascendant point deserves its own, pedestal here, and its own little book or whatever. But overall, from the ascendant to the 3rd house, it's very much of a self-discovery place. Whereas the 12th house and 11th and 10th, they're more of a noble place. So the 10th and 11th is easier to understand. The 10th is the house of responsibility. Whatever planet is here needs to be seen. It needs to have responsibility. It's capable of responsibility. And it is an achiever overall. Of course, the oppositions, for example, are going to describe a more intricate dynamic with that. Okay, why isn't it not so easy for you to assume this role of authority and responsibility, right? That's where you start to add the picture. But overall, it's pretty easy to determine the 10th house. The 11th house is like, this is the leader of groups, the leader of, right? So this is why we can say leader here, because as opposed to the 8th house, you're still learning how to work with people. The 8th house is really good for professions that have to do with counseling, for example. If you're looking at someone's chart to determine the professional arena, 8th and 7th houses, they're amazing with people. These are the people that really, at that stage of their life, they're learning how to have that interaction with people. And these are people that can excel in the professions of, you know, like connecting with others like that in their work field as well. So these are people that are very proactive in general toward, you know, others. Maybe you want to check their 3rd house to see if they're also good negotiators. Maybe their 3rd house is going to add, do they have things with speaking that can help, that are gifts? Or maybe it's lessons they're learning so that they can really master this relationship dynamic of the 7th and 8th house, you know, working with others. So they each have slightly different roles of working with others, but when you get to the 10th houses, you're ready to be a leader. The 11th house, you're ready to be a leader with others. So the 11th house is also a very noble place overall. These are people that are committed to bringing people together through groups, through events, through whatever ways. These are just very other-oriented people. This is also very much to do with world events. You know, I did a reading just like 2 weeks ago for someone that had a very powerful lineup because of the Saturn and Jupiter conjunction, was triggering all the air points in her chart that were activating her role with the 11th house. And she's been working already for several years with doing something that is going to bring together other cultures, and she wants to educate people. Very beautiful. I know there's other people starting to do this already too, but very beautiful to see it in her chart. She was starting to she wants to educate people, not just about planting and how to plant your own food and like stuff like that to help with hunger, but also teach people about health through that. So this is taking this type of work to another level, and she's gathering a lot of different organizations from around the world for this project. And I was really happy to do her chart for her because the grand conjunction was setting off in her chart all the alignments necessary for her to start doing that on a more significant level in 2021. And this has to do with world things. And her chart, it was lit up 11th house and 9th house. You know, and so this is why, for example, I'm looking here, we got a north node in the 9th house, right? So you're like, hey, there's something with the 9th house here, bringing people together, you know, sharing your gifts with others in a more humanitarian way. That is very much the function of the 11th house. But then the 12th house becomes a little tricky because the 12th house is the house of the hidden, right? Yes, but not necessarily. You know, I always see the 12th house as the house of the master teacher, the enlightened one. This is your role and responsibility to be that leader, that figure to the world, depending what you have there, okay? The 12th house is the house of the innermost depths of spirit. This is where it all ends and where it's all going to begin from. These are where all the lessons and masteries and everything, it's here. It's in the 12th house. And that's why the 12th house is such a difficult house to understand. And I have a very old video that I'm like, oh God, it's so old. It's even kind of embarrassing to watch again, but there's gold in there about the 12th house for free on my YouTube channel called Mysteries of the 12th House. And in that, I do a deep dive in that video about the 12th house. So if you have questions, go to that video and watch it again. But the 12th house is a combination of self because it's that leadership quality of self. This is not you like the first house getting to know yourself. This is mastery, my dear. This is mastery. Now, of course, it gets more intricate if you have a sign. Let's say I have a close friend right now that I'm starting to work with, and he has a lot of planets in the 12th house, of course, a lot of masteries, but his sun is at 0 degrees Gemini in the 12th house. So his 12th house ends with Taurus, and then Gemini begins in the 12th house. So he has a whole bunch of planets in Taurus, indicating the old energy, the mature energy, the mastery here. And there's something rather unique about his role and his mission with that 0-degree Gemini sun, coming from the evolved house of mastery of the 12th house, but still with a very unique 0-degree sun. There's still something. So, I mean, look at the combination of this leadership role here. This is someone who is evolved enough to use the planetary energies here. And this is where the 12th house can be confusing, because if you're not surrendering to the evolution of the 12th house and being like, okay, I'm a master, I need to really step up my game with these energies here and use it in a mature way. If you don't have that approach, the 12th house will totally knock you off your feet. The 12th house can be the la la land. It can be your road to perdition, right? you can get lost in the 12th house, lost in the 12th house. So this is where it makes a difference what sign you have in there, what planets you have in there. This is where, when we, on the next class that we're going to have, is going to be about starting to synthesize these energies, these big energies. A sign, where it all begins with a house, and then of course the last but most important piece is adding the planets. That's where you really start to paint the picture here. But this is where you want to, when you start diving deeper about the purpose and roles of these houses here, you start to see that, hey, the sign matters, the planets that are in there matters. It's not saying if the person's good or bad, but it's just talking about the dynamic that you have to work with as a soul. So yes, this part over here is very much about me, but this quadrant here, the top quadrant, it's meant to be an evolved and mature expression of me. Like, how can I take on my role as a leader now that I have learned about myself, learned how to work with others, right? Hopefully we're saying that. Whereas this part over here is me, but really just exploring yourself. And of course, also sharing this with the world. Your entire journey is about the entire zodiac. It's not just this. This is just the part that is easily seen to the world. Okay, this is not just the part that is you to the world. It's a part that is easily seen. But hey, honey, the top part would not exist without the bottom part. So as I always say, the IC to me is the most important part here. It's the structure of the entire chart. If you want to really get to know someone at their heart and core level, look at their IC. The nature of the sign on the IC is going to describe what holds the chart together, what even allows this leader to come to be. It's like, it's a big combination here, big players. So don't mistake in that this is just the part that needs to be seen to the world. You are the entirety of your chart. Your second house is just as important for your leadership in the 11th house as your midheaven, as your 5th house, as your ascendant. Well, your ascendant is a separate book. But the second house is super important to who that leader is going to be and the expression of that. But when you are looking at someone's chart overall here, you can get a good idea of how, the struggles of that person, the dilemma of that person. Am I looking at a master who is fully, already with that path open up to the world? Mind you, the 12th house is a visible place, but it needs to be seen as the teacher. It needs to be seen as the master. If it doesn't, then it can be a complicated place. Now, I've seen many masters in the health industry here as well, doctors and nurses as well. So, the 12th house, there's something to be said about the 12th house being a part of the axis of health. So whereas the 12th house is primarily the health of the soul, which then trickles to the health of the mind and so forth, of course, the emotions as well, there is also a very definite aspect of the 12th house being interlinked with medicine, with nurses, with doctors, and with that path as well. But overall, there is a very deep level of spiritual understanding with the 12th house that allows the planets in there to become masters in their field. People with planets in the 12th house, these people, these are the best storytellers ever, because they can, whatever they're telling you, it's like before you know it, you're caught in that siren's web or nest or whatever, the net. I said everything except for the net. Wow, that thing is really kicking in today, the Capricorn in third house. Before you know it, you're caught, like, and I've observed this because I know astrology, and I get their chart and I'm like, oh my God, you're a 12th house sun. I knew it, you had to be. These people, they have this hypnotic way of speaking that they will just capture you and captivate you and whatever they're talking about, and they can lead you into this like hypnotic dance that before you know it's like whatever they're talking about, you're just like listening. It's amazing. It's pretty amazing. So the 12th house, there's a big responsibility with this level of mastery to use it for something that's going to benefit the world. That's essentially the 12th house, and that's why it's so difficult to understand. Anyway, me, okay, me, this part of the chart, me, this part of the chart, them. But you're fitting it into a context of what other people see, the cover of the book, and then the content of the book, the personal world. Do we have anybody here that wants to give any particular example that may have a lot of planets? This is specially, right now I'm looking specially just to complement these two halves over here with the vertical line.
Yeah, so I have a lot in that upper left part. So I have in the 12th house, I have my sun, I have Venus, and my ascendant, and Mercury. My 12th, and in my 11th house, I have Neptune, and in my 10th house, I have Uranus. And
yeah, big planets too. Those are like mission driven, right? Because they have a lot to do with the evolution of your soul.
Yeah. And that's why the session I had with you, just finally I got what's been going on all my life. I mean, I get still emotional, and just listening to you again, because it's been so, it's been God, I'm getting really emotional. It's been so much of my journey because for the longest time I just did not understand these strong placements, and I think especially because my ascendant is also in the 12th house. So I just felt there was so much inner world and so much also feeling of a mission. But then I just have to share, my Chiron is in my 3rd house of expression. So it's almost, there's so much that wants to be told, and I have this, and I still have this incredible inner world. And also I found my spiritual journey, what has helped me a lot to also, I feel, channel it more and be more connected to source energy, and then become more confident in expressing it and not just holding, because I feel a lot of these energies been stuck inside me for the longest time, and I just had all these worlds but did not really know how to bring them outside, like to communicate them really. And so
this is very powerful. Can I just interject really quick here and say how beautiful this is that Carola is sharing this, because this is coming from someone who has had firsthand experience of what I'm talking about. When you have a friend, someone in your family, your astrologer, looking at your chart and seeing you so deeply and understanding the dynamic of your journey so deeply, this is a very profound experience. And this is why until this day, Carola is so moved by it. And I was so moved by her sharing on the last class how it was the session with me that gave her the necessary fuel to keep going and help her be where she is today. With now she has this beautiful baby, this movie that it's coming out from, this expression from her. you know, all the hardships that she went through, culminating in that session that we had together, and me saying, honey, there's nothing wrong here, everything's right, this is so beautiful, and seeing her for who she is and helping her understand her role in the world within the blueprint of her chart. You know, this is like, I wanted to interject there because I know sometimes, like, I'm here explaining as a teacher and it can start to get a little technical, and I'm like, you know, starting to get all intellectual and fancy and all that, but like, let's remember why we're even doing this. Like, we're deciphering our journey here. We are helping take ourselves, our potential to the next level. And so you being able to understand that about yourself, and then a step more, help others understand that about themselves, is huge. It may just be that little fuel and that extra motivation that the person needs to keep going.
Yeah.
You know, and then become some great, you know, achieve a great feat in the world. And Carol, I will tell you, honey, like, you're doing amazing. And this is ultimately about understanding the voice that we have. Okay, this is what we're discovering. And there's a huge wave right now. I've been saying a huge wave of leaders, but I also want to honor, in the midst of all these leaders, there's a very, very powerful wave of women. Okay, there's a lot of feminine leaders that are rising right now. A lot of leaders all together, but this is something that it's a very powerful journey of self-discovery that I'm also want to help other women understand. I'm seeing more and more there's a new level of creativity that is coming from us, you know? And so this is very much about understanding that we're new territory here. There is an evolution of sexual energy that is happening. There's an evolution of new models of love, of relationships, of heart connection. And these are all based on creativity. Okay, this is about using our connections, even our sexual energy, not in the way of that we used to before, for procreation, or even maybe possibly to take care of my man and my family. Like, this is world stuff here. And a lot of the women leaders are rising and seeing this. This is a very instinctual, almost maternal aspect of us that's coming to light.
It's also Black Moon Lilith, which
Yes,
is great. And that was so powerful in the reading, because I remember because I have a very strong placement of Black Moon Lilith opposition my sun conjunct Jupiter. And I remember also in our session, you were like, there's like that dark, so yeah, that opposition, but that kind of dark signature. And I know it was always there. And I've always been trying to suppress it because it was like, oh my God, that's not, like, what is that? Oh my God, I'm
paving way, honey. You're a leader.
And that of you. And then this film that I'm going to do with my partner, this is also, it's very Black Moon Lilith inspired. And last year she was so strong in my lunar return. It was constantly like Black Moon Lilith showing up everywhere. So it was, but it all started in our session where you like really basically gave me permission. I have a signature of the dark, but it's the feminine dark, like, that needs to be expressed, and don't suppress it anymore. Don't.
And in that there is a certain level of liberation, and this is going to be collective, honey. We're paving the way for that. Okay, and it's all about new models of joining forces with people that are also with the same vision of creation as you, because this is how we help expand and bring these new creations out into the world. Innovations that is going to help with the evolution of the planet. Okay. Beautiful. So, anything else you wanted to share with that, or is there anyone else that wants to share, chime in? Planetary distribution.
I apologize for not muting myself earlier.
Hi, Jen.
Noticed, that I have my North Node and all three personal planets plus my sun in the 7th through 9th houses, and then I have like all the social and outer planets on the left side. So on the left side of my midheaven IC axis, and
so here's where I want to take you a step further and ask you to meditate on what you feel that means to you. You know, this is where I gave you the overall.
So I'm kind of, it's like in my own, always kind of considered myself an extroverted introvert who's others focused.
Interesting. There's that dynamic too. Yeah.
Um,
the introvert extrovert. Yeah. There's
yeah,
a name for that, right?
I kind of have equal placements top and bottom, but I
Yeah.
have minus the norm, and the only thing I have in the lower right hand quadrant is Juno. That's it.
Let me just interject something here about, because I was just getting that visual. I've seen charts where here we have the extremes, where we have all the focus on the 7th and 8th, for example, 7th and 8th, and then we have a little bit of the other planets in the 1st and the 2nd. And this is what the picture I was getting to. But of the introvert extrovert, right, that tug of war. But then going a step further, I was including the 12th house over here, and I want to let you know that people that have planets in the 12th houses, they feel like they're introverts. This is another complicated dynamic of the 12th house here, because the 12th house has a very introverted and introspective quality to it. How do I get this out here? Can you guys see me here or no?
Yes.
I can't. Okay. If you can see me, that's fine. I couldn't see myself. But anyway, if you have planets in the 12th house, please know that the roles of that planet requires a certain level of maturity and evolution, because there is a pull to be the hermit here. There is a pull to be introverted, and your level, depending on the planet that is there, your level of experience in the world will require a degree of pulling away from the world, whether you're the doctor or the nurse, or whether you are the spiritual seeker. There will be an element that will be pulling you inward. But do not forget that there is a role and responsibility of mastery here. And there is something to be said about the me factor with the 12th house also being a teacher. Okay? So,
Raquel, this is Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
Hi. I can relate completely to what you're saying, because I have Uranus, Pluto, and Mars on my ascendant in the 12th house.
Oh.
And it took so much self-investigation to even begin to understand what it represented in my chart.
That's really difficult, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Really, really difficult. As a matter of fact, I didn't even understand it until maybe 5 years ago. I started to begin to understand what it might represent in me. And being more of an introvert, thinking that I was more of an introvert.
Yeah.
And
this is in your first house, you said?
No, this is 12th house, all 12th house.
Yes.
But Mars is on my ascendant.
Oh.
So there's all this built up energy too of knowing that I need something, but not knowing what that is.
Wow, this is so powerful. And oh my God, I want so much to get to the point where we can have meetings where we can share. Like, how do you, like, I have so many questions, because I feel like a Pluto in the 12th house is one of the most difficult for me as an astrologer. I feel like all the books in the world are not even going to do the subject justice in helping me understand what that means. That's because you have the soul there. That's the soul. And this is where you experience the most disempowering experiences of your life, up until when you have the aha moment, and then you can turn that around and it becomes your greatest asset of power. But because it's the soul and it's in the past life house, like, this is a very intricate dynamic. So, I'm really looking forward to where we can actually talk about these energies, and when you get to that level, that you can share also what you feel that means to you, and how, the more we start learning and having these classes here, and you're like, whoa, I get to understand myself. You have that, oh my God moment. But then the next phase is you're going to start sharing that with us.
I will eventually.
I love that. Wow.
It's still deep and dark right now, but eventually.
Yeah. So, Myra, did that answer your question?
Yeah, that was good. A lot of information to digest now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and this is why like getting a lot of different charts and just practicing is super important, because Where's me? Can you guys see me?
I can see it.
How come I can't see me?
I can see you.
Man.
Can you pin yourself?
Myra! Oh, is that what you do? Remove
Yeah,
all pins. I only have speaker gallery, remove all pins.
You can remove all pins or go to speaker. And then it should be you if you're talking.
Oh, now it's you. Oh, there you go. Yay! Myra is like my savior with these things. I know it's such easy things. In the beginning when Myra met me, she's like, Raquel, I'm surprised that you got as far as you did with your work. It's like you and technology. Oh my God. But anyway, I'm doing really good. I'm learning a lot. So everyone, 11:22. I love that. Let's start to bring this all together here and wrap it up and just start to dip our toes into angles, because on the next class we're going to really dive into angles and then the pairing of signs with houses, which you can get many different combinations, and we're going to dive into the heart and soul of that. But in this class here, I feel like I gave a lot of tips, a lot of really, really good astrologer tips for you. Things that are not like taught, but that can make all the difference in your practice. They're not necessarily 1, 2, 3 cookbook, learning here, but these are powerful tips that I use in my practice and that give me the results that I have. So in the first class, we talked a lot about very basic principles, especially the elements and the starting point of these essences. In this class, we talked a lot about the overall feel of the chart, which includes the geometry aspect of it. We also talked about the planetary distribution. And we talked about letting the chart speak to you. Not having to define. Like, even if you do come across a chart that has, a whole bunch of big planets in the 12th house, and if you're anything like me, you want to dive straight into you want to pull it all apart and then put it all together right away. And if you're like that, I'm just telling you right off the bat, let me just save you months and maybe even years of headache here. Don't do that. Let the planet speak to you. If it wants to, if it wants to speak to you through a body sensation, what is it? Is your body contracting somewhere? Sometimes I will be looking at a planetary alignment, and before I even notice it, it's like, oh my God, I got these muscles that are contracting in my body. Like, wow, listen to your body. Listen to other clues before getting into the mental aspect of it. And if you see something, standing out to you in an element, a specific element that's standing out to you for whatever reason, you bring it up and you leave it there in your awareness. You're going to be doing this with a lot of things. You're going to be skimming the chart and you're going to lift certain things that are going to stand out to you, and you're just going to leave it there suspended in this little compartment in your brain and your awareness that you're going to go back to, and you're going to pull that piece of the puzzle and see if it fits in there, and it adds more to the picture. It's not a linear thing. So looking at the planetary distribution, looking at the angles, or better said, the geometry. We're not at the angles yet. Just the feel of the geometry. What does it feel like in your body? And this can be a process that, it may take 30 seconds altogether from beginning to end. It may be a process that maybe for some of the intuitives out there, they're going to want to do a whole session around that, or just play around and explore with that. And depending on your charts that you're looking at, like, you won't even look at that. I'm at a point where I do so many sessions a week, and I look at so many charts that I just have like specific things that I dive straight into sometimes. Like, each one's different, but it just depends on a lot of factors. And you're going to create that for yourself too. You're going to create your own little style. But right now, these exercises are helping you get familiar with the astrology chart as as an expression, as an intelligence. And then from that level of respect, you can start to look at the dynamics in new ways, in deeper ways. And then, of course, you're going to get to a certain level that you're going to feel so comfortable that there's many times that I don't even look at the elements. I'll look at the element like complementary. Let's say that I'll dive straight into the north node. Sometimes I'll do that. Two key places that I usually start at the chart is the ascendant and the north node. Well, north node and south node, they go hand in hand. These are two places where, not all the time, but it's very normal for me to start there. And so sometimes I'll start with the north node, and I'll see whatever, a north node in Taurus and a south node in Scorpio, and I'm like, wow, okay, that's Scorpio. Anything in Scorpio is intense. And if you're getting a past life script coming with Scorpio, all right, what else do we have to understand here about this blueprint? And I'll start looking at the rest of the chart, and then maybe I'll be like, oh yeah, let me see the elements here and the modalities and all the numbers all together. And I'll notice like, oh my God, there is a super outstanding thing here with water that is complementing to the past life story or scenario. So you're going to get to that level where you're going to be more flexible with that. But it's good to have these starting points, getting familiar with the energies. Okay. And on some charts, you're going to skip it altogether. Others, you're going to spend extra time. Others, you will start with that. There are times that I do start absolutely just with the elements and modalities. Then, like I said, I'll cover the planets or try not to peek and just sit with the geometry of it. So it's going to be your call. But right now, this is a great, great exercise for you. It's helping to set the tone and foundation for the pieces that you're going to be adding. Okay. The angles, we are going to have a class. On our next class, we're going to start to combine what does it really mean in practice to combine the energy of the signs with the houses. This is where you really start to understand the dynamic between people and people. Because you can get, people that have the same sign, and this is where not all Sagittarius suns are going to be the same. That's why I always say, just because you're an Aries sun, that's what's going to happen to your week. When you start to blend signs and houses, now you're starting to set people apart. Now you're starting to define that fingerprint. This is such a key part of astrology. And the beginning of it all, it's the angles. So we're going to dive deeper into what that means as far as bringing the signs into the picture. But I want to let you know here, remind you that the angles are the structure of the person's journey here. We went in depth about what that structure means and all the points and each their importance. So please watch that video again in the foundations folder. Help! You stop talking. Please go to that if you have any questions on that. But remember that the angles are so important here because we're painting we're setting the tone, right? So far, we've been setting the tone. So immediately when you start to add the angles into the picture, you're making it concrete. You're materializing that. Everything you've been kind of just like feeling and getting the impressions and all that, boom, all of a sudden there is a mold here. And the mold is defined by the four corners of your chart. This is the mold that is going to give you the structure to have your experiences and expressions. That's really powerful. We got to get that on paper somehow. Not on video because I got this big purple eye here. I thought it was going to be better by today's. Oh, man. Anyway.
You're still beautiful.
Thank you. I'm so self-conscious. I'm like, oh, my God. Thank God I've been doing this for a while with you now, and I feel more comfortable. But I think more of like the people that are going to watch it in the future. But thank you, so sweet.
I can't really tell.
Yeah, man.
I wouldn't have really noticed it until you pointed it
I know
out.
the sky.
Yeah, it's more
Like-
like those bags under your eyes from being sleep deprived.
Yeah, or like crying or something, right?
Not the obvious.
But you know, the angles, I cannot stress enough the importance of the angles for you in all 4 angles, not just the ascendant and midheaven. This is what we're going to explore more in depth, because the descendant and the IC are just as important. You know, I mean, there is something to be said with the ascendant point. For me, the ascendant is its own, wow, it's where it all begins, where it all ended and where it all begins to be continued. So it's a really powerful, and you can give someone a whole session just by the ascendant. But really, the 4 corners are what is allowing the mold, the physical expression of that to come to be. So understanding the signs that you have on the 4 angles, whew, this is, if there's ever a starting point of anything, this is it. You know, like, I mean, like a physical starting point. Like, if you want to start getting linear here now, start with the angles. The angles will give you a really good summary, a condensed summary of the heart soul essence of the person's chart. Because it's going to describe a lot more than just like the person's expression or their nature. This is like the structure, like what they're meant to be following as a blueprint, as a pattern for these introduction of energies through the 4 corners, each holding a specific function in your chart, in your life.
So,
yes,
Raquel, it's Lynn. Hey.
Hi, Lynn.
Happy New Year.
I you just got in. Happy New Year, my love.
Well, I have one for you here.
Okay.
If you have a moment still. First of all, let's see, how do we even explain this? I have my sun at 4 degrees of Aquarius. On my...
Congratulations on the Grand Conjunction.
Right. Just wait a second, okay. My ascendant is in Capricorn. All of that was opposed to my ascendant. In my lunar chart, I have Black Moon Lilith and Uranus in the 4th house in Taurus. On the night of the solstice, Blair and I had an attic fire in our house.
Wow.
Firemen swarming our house. And now we're in a hotel, and it's going to take 4 to 6 months to repair our house.
Wow.
So this happened on the day of the big conjunction, right?
Oh, wow. And that Black Moon involved there?
Which was on the angles of my chart that you're talking about.
On the angles.
So there you go.
You're gonna see
what you were talking about this whole class. So.
Oh my goodness. First of all, Lynn, oh honey, I am so happy that you guys are okay. First of all.
We are.
Wow.
We had a wonderful attitude.
And it could have been much worse.
Yeah. You know, when we're done here, we're gonna wrap this up, you know, within the next few minutes here. And I will leave the after party here open for us to share anything that we want to share. But I do want to say that, I mean, things have been just insane. Like my sister, the one that you guys know also, her daughter got in a really bad accident and still in the hospital. Yeah, it's not been easy. Like I've been feeling a lot of these alignments have been culminating in many ways for many people. So Lynn, what I have to tell you is that this situation is gonna push something from you, because I know I did your solar return, and I know these alignments are pushing into a new phase here. And this,
tell me, it was like a jolt.
Yeah, there's something that's gonna happen here that's gonna really trigger something that needs to happen for you in your next steps. Especially because this conjunction was on top of your sun. This is huge. Huge.
I know.
This is your purpose here, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, sure.
wow. But let's bring the attention also to the fact of the angles. Because once you understand the importance of angles, which is we're going to dive deeper into the next class, you're going to see that angles is not just talking about your natal chart. The angles are talking about events that are going to stand out for you. So Lynn brought up a lunar return. You know, and okay, we're talking about natal charts, but you're going to see that angles are so important that when you're looking at a lunar return and you have things on the angles, they're
like when Lilith and Uranus,
you're going to be
right there.
They're going to stand out to you.
Yeah, in the third house, right there at that time when all of that was happening, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway,
angles in general. They are parts that produce very strong outlets of energy. There's very strong outlets of energy to the planets. Yeah, when they are in the first house. Well, first of all, the actual cusp is by far the most sensitive. But then you want to get the angular houses too. Planets in the first house, planets in the fourth house, in the seventh house, in the 10th house. These are angular houses, and things that come here, they come in very strong. This is the impulse of new beginning, of new life. Remember, we learned in the foundations. So things that come here, you know, any situation that comes in through the angular houses, they come in strong. So understanding the concept of the blending of the signs in your natal chart with the angles that are holding the foundation and the structure for that blueprint is very important. Okay?
Raquel?
Yes. Final words.
It's Blair.
Blair! My dear!
Hey.
Oh, Blair, where are you? Oh, honey.
You know, the sense I got was that we were involved in a rebalancing of energy on the planet, and this was our responsibility, and it showed up as a fire.
Wow.
And now we're in the process of kind of recreating our lives.
Wow. That just touched me very deeply. So much respect for both of you. Really.
Thank you.
Wow. That's very significant. Thank you all. And thank everyone in here also for doing your part, you know, in whatever way that you are participating in, you know, just holding things together here as we take this quantum leap in transition.
You know, it's interesting because that day
you guys are heroes. Wow.
Thank you. It was interesting because that day we were both very deep in meditation.
Oh my God.
We were really
figure.
We were really blessed to not have it be worse than it was. So
wow.
You know.
Did you guys lose a lot of things?
You know, our kitchen is destroyed. The whole ceiling came down in the kitchen. But,
that's huge, Lynn. Oh my God.
Yeah, really. The firefighters were very respectful of our stuff, and they did a great job. It was shocking though, you know. But you know, I'm an Aquarius. It was a
talk about a jolt. This was a jolt from the universe, and introducing the energies of the new cycle. Thank you, Lynn. Wow.
So we're good.
Posted, okay?
Yeah, we're good. I just thought it was interesting since you were talking about angles, and that all happened
it's
at the angle. So right now I'm really seeing how the energy moves.
Yeah. And the angles are such a powerful speakers. They bring really strong messages.
Yeah.
And this is where, you know, in other classes that we have, or when you watch me synthesize my own chart, and then when I talk about these concepts, it's like, oh, now you understand. Now you're being able to put these pieces together because we talked about it. And then you see me in action and what it means if I have this combination this month in an angular house and this combination in another, you know, and then you start to see the dynamics of how they talk.
And I have a lot of planets in the 12th house and in the 3rd house. So, you know, it's just sort of interesting to put all that together of what you were talking about today.
Yeah.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, everyone. I know we've been 2 hours here into our class today, so I'm going to just open up for any comments or questions that have to do with what we talked about, and especially if they're comments that will close the like, well, you'll point out what you have, like Lynn did, but also bring out, oh yeah, because the angles, and that was happening, the angles, and show how these things are showing up in your chart. Also with the planetary distribution, you're welcome to speak. And of course, any questions, if anything that I wasn't clear enough, are also welcome.
So, I was kind of looking at the planetary distribution was something that was kind of interesting to me, and I noticed that in that left side of the chart, the bottom part of it, I basically just have, of course, Mars is conjunct my Scorpio ascendant there, but I have Saturn retrograde in Aquarius. That's basically it for the heavy hitters in that lower part. But then I have 12 heavenly bodies in that upper part, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in Scorpio in my 12th house. So I got like 6 bodies plus the ascendant Scorpio in my 12th house. So there's a lot of Scorpio energy. But with Mars being down in my first house, like Mars is written all over everything. Like it's my whole chart is covered with Mars, right? It's colored with Mars energy kind of thing, I guess I would say. But all those, like, it's all the feminine energies I find are in the 12th house, and it starts with Venus in Ceres right near the beginning, but then moves on towards my ascendant with Neptune, Vesta, Black Moon, Lilith, all kind of close to conjunct on that. And those female energies, it takes me more with the masculine energies on my ascendant and all that. It takes me more to bring out the feminine energies, but everybody always tells me, Paul, stop throwing those girly energies around. Like, WTF, what are you talking about? Like, you know, and so I don't see a lot of the things myself, but some other people do see some things about the way I express.
Wow, that is an interesting observation.
Yeah, so it's like others are kind of slapping me into my own reality, saying, I don't know what you're talking about. And then until I started reading, like, looking at astrology, I'm kind of getting it now. It's kind of making sense. And today's a lunar return for me. I'm going to have 2 of them this month. The next one.
Oh my God! So the month you have 2 lunar returns is a super significant month.
Yeah, no shit. Black Moon. The next one's on the 29th. What happens on the 29th? You know that date? Black Moon, Lilith, and Mars are going to conjunct in Taurus at 11 degrees, and I'm just going to blow up.
Oh my gosh, Paul!
Wow. This morning.
You're not alone, Paul. You have 26 other
people. Be careful what you say.
Wow.
Be very careful. Be careful about what you create.
I had 2 hours of sleep last night. I went to sleep this morning at close to 3:30, and I was up at close to 5:30 with those energies waking me up.
You know, Paul is. When I did Paul's chart, we had a session. When was it, Paul's? Like September or something?
September 8th.
And it was so fascinating. I was like, my God, Paul, can I use your chart as like, and he was even like, yeah, I'm an open book if you want. You know, maybe we should do a session where we just talk about some of these things. Paul has a really interesting few like dynamics in this chart. Like I remember we were looking at some of the transits for him or progressions. I don't remember exactly what it was, but there was a time where you had all these big planets coming up on your midheaven. Like it was like Pluto, or was it Pluto and Uranus or Black Moon? I don't remember what it was. It was so big, and you were sharing with me how you were like the rebel of the church, but at the same time you were getting all these like visitations from, you know, these big energies, and it was very descriptive of Pluto. Was it Pluto that we were looking at, Paul?
Yeah. There's Pluto. My whole chart's pretty Plutonian, but yeah, 10th house is.
But it was in the midheaven. It was like for the world to see, and it's like sometimes, you know, and then the world sees the sides of Pluto and wants to give him a hard time about it because he has some really powerful stories of things that he's been through with the church and so forth. But you know, little did they know that he was really being activated and being prepared by spirit as a teenager through these big things happening on his midheaven here. But because it was on his midheaven, and this is why I'm bringing it up, it was exposed to the world, and the world got to see it, and the world got to interpret it in their way, you know?
There's more of it, and there's always been that kind of stuff with Mars. I got Mars on the ascendant in Scorpio has given me some really interesting insights into sex kind of stuff, and that's really neat. ways. But
it's an interesting dynamic.
I had one girl. I've had men walk straight up to me, grab me by my face, and plant a kiss square on.
Really?
Oh, yeah, several times. Oh, multiple times.
See,
Oh, yeah.
what
Some of
happens
them
when
are
you have like certain configuration? Wow.
College professor. I've had like just guys walking into my house at a party, look straight at me, walk up to me, just plant. I'm not gay. I'm not even close to being gay, and I don't care if people are. I'm so secure in my heterosexuality, but I have.
Wow, that's And these are some of the things that I thought would be interesting to like talk about, because your cases are so extreme that it gives such perfect like segue for me to explain these energies and like what a Mars on the ascendant or the first house really means.
I got kissed square on my face several times by Catholic priests. Oh yeah, during confession. Oh God.
During confession. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but your role there in the church, exposing all that.
It's like, stop doing that, guys. It doesn't interest me. I had one girlfriend tell me, Paul, you ooze sex.
You what?
You ooze sex. Everything you do.
That's Mars in the first house, guys.
Yeah, it really is. But then when I look at all the 12th house energies that are sitting right there in Scorpio, I kind of get it, because a lot of those feminine energies comes into the sexuality of me, right? And when you're behind closed doors, there's so much esoteric stuff that goes on with those energies. It's not about making babies at that point. My making babies days, I did that when I was my that.
Yeah.
But it's a completely different role now. Stuff is like creation comes in different ways. They use those energies in different ways.
Wow. Isn't it so incredible how astrology can help us get to know